The fluorescent lights flickered above us, casting a harsh glare on the polished conference table where we sat, a sea of anxious faces, each reflecting a mixture of disbelief and confusion. It was a typical Monday morning at the corporate office, but the air was thick with an unsettling tension that I had never experienced before. Mr. Thompson, our VP, stood at the front of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, exuding an air of authority that felt suffocating. The moment he uttered the words "department cut," I felt my heart drop. My breath caught in my throat, and the world around me faded, leaving only the echoes of his announcement reverberating in my mind. A wave of shocked silence enveloped the room. Colleagues exchanged wide-eyed glances, their expressions mirroring my own turmoil. I could hear the faint rustle of papers and the soft hum of the air conditioning, but it all felt distant, as if I were underwater, unable to comprehend the reality unfolding before me. I glanced at my best friend, Emma, who sat 2 seats away, her brow furrowed in concern. We had weathered many storms together, but this felt different. This was not just a corporate decision. It was a betrayal of trust that shattered the sense of security we had built within our team. As I looked around the room, I could see the weight of the news settling on everyone's shoulders. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional muffled sob or the sound of someone clearing their throat in an attempt to regain composure. I felt a knot tightening in my stomach, a mixture of anger and fear brewing within me. How could he do this? I thought of my colleagues who depended on their jobs, their families relying on them. What would happen to us? The meeting dragged on, filled with awkward laughter and forced reassurances, but the underlying tension remained palpable. I could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty of what was to come. It was a surreal experience, like watching a train wreck in slow motion. I was acutely aware of the stakes. Our livelihoods were on the line, and I felt a fierce determination to understand the motive behind this drastic decision. Why would Mr. Thompson choose to dismantle a department that had always performed well? As the meeting concluded, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. My heart raced and my palms were clammy. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I could not let this stand. I glanced at Emma, who gave me a slight nod, her expression resolute. We would confront Mr. Thompson together. This was just the beginning of our fight against the injustice that loomed over us, and I was ready to take a stand. The anticipation of what was to come hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and electric, and I could feel the first stirrings of resolve in my chest. The battle for our futures had just begun, and I was determined to uncover the truth behind this betrayal. As I stepped into the break room, the scent of burnt coffee mingled with the faint floral notes of a half-empty vase on the counter, remnants of a birthday celebration from last week. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting a harsh glow on the faces of my colleagues who were gathered in small clusters, their voices hushed as they exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable, like a storm brewing just out of sight. I leaned against the counter, letting the cool surface ground me for a moment. My heart raced as I thought about the meeting we had just endured, the shock and disbelief etched into the faces of my team. I recalled Lisa's expression, her eyes wide with worry as she had leaned in to whisper, "What are we going to do now, Julia?" I had brushed her concern aside, but now, standing amidst the remnants of camaraderie, I felt the weight of her question bearing down on me. "We need to stick together, guys," I said, raising my voice slightly to cut through the low murmurs. "This isn't just about one decision, it's about how we move forward as a team. We can't let fear dictate our response." I watched as a few heads nodded, but I noticed the hesitance in their eyes, the fear of retaliation from Mr. Thompson looming over them like a dark cloud. A quiet voice from the corner spoke up, breaking the silence that followed my declaration. It was Mark, a junior analyst with a tendency to blend into the background. "But what if he finds out we're talking about this?" His words hung in the air, and I felt a pang of frustration. How could I rally them when their fears were so deeply rooted? I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "We have to find a way to support each other, to stand up against this. I won't let this decision tear us apart. Let's meet later to discuss our options, to strategize our next steps. We owe it to ourselves and to each other." The atmosphere shifted slightly, a flicker of camaraderie igniting among them. I could see the flickering hope in their eyes, but I knew it would take more than encouragement to overcome the fear that had gripped us all. As I left the break room, the weight of my words lingered in my mind. I was determined to find a way to unite my colleagues, to transform our frustration into action, but I also felt the heavy burden of doubt creeping in. Would they really stand with me against the VP? The atmosphere in the office had shifted dramatically since the announcement. The once vibrant energy that tinged the air was now replaced by a heavy silence, punctuated only by the sounds of muffled conversations and the faint clicking of keyboards, a stark contrast to the camaraderie we had shared. I could smell the bitter aroma of coffee mingling with the metallic scent of anxiety that permeated the air. As colleagues exchanged furtive glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and indignation. I sat at my desk, my fingers tapping anxiously against the polished surface. I could feel my heart pounding like a drum, a rhythm of anger and frustration at the injustice unfolding around me. The news of the department cuts had sent shockwaves through the team, and now, as the dust began to settle, the reality of our situation loomed large. Each moment spent in the office felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an inevitable confrontation. In the break room, I overheard snippets of conversations that made my stomach churn. "Can you believe it? He just doesn't care about us," one colleague whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. Another chimed in, "We're just numbers to him. This is all about saving face." Their words echoed in my mind, a reminder of the mounting resentment that had taken root within the team. I glanced around, catching sight of Lisa, my best friend who stood by the coffee machine, her brow furrowed. She caught my eye and shook her head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the turmoil we were facing together. I decided it was time to address the growing discontent. Gathering my courage, I called for an impromptu meeting. As I stood in front of my colleagues, I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I know many of you are frustrated and confused about the recent cuts. Trust me, I am too," I began, my voice steady but laced with urgency. A silence fell over the room, and I could see the tension in their faces. David, one of the more outspoken members of our team, crossed his arms defiantly. "Frustrated? Julia, this is our livelihoods at stake here. We can't just sit back and accept this." His voice was rising, and I could feel the heat of his anger radiating through the air. I nodded, acknowledging his concerns. "I understand, truly, but I need your help. We can't let this slide. We need to come together and create a plan to address these injustices head-on," I urged, my heart racing as I spoke. I could see the flicker of resolve in some of their eyes, but fear held others back. As we discussed our next steps, I could feel the atmosphere shift slightly, a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. We brainstormed ways to approach HR, to voice our concerns and demand answers. Each suggestion brought a mix of enthusiasm and trepidation, the fear of retaliation looming large. My partner's voice echoed in my mind, warning me about the risks I was taking. Yet, as I looked around at my colleagues, I felt a surge of determination. We were in this together, and together we could fight back against the system that had betrayed us. I glanced at Lisa, who smiled encouragingly, and for the first time in a while I felt a flicker of hope. We could reclaim our narrative and show the company that we wouldn't be silenced, but I knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The stakes were higher than ever, and with every passing moment, the tension in the office grew. I could sense the fear simmering just below the surface, and I wondered how far we would need to go to achieve the justice we so desperately sought. As I left the meeting, I felt a mixture of fear and resolve. This was just the beginning of a long fight against the indifference that had taken root within our company. The air in the office was thick with uncertainty. Each breath I took felt heavy, as if the very walls were closing in on me. My colleagues, once a unified team, now scattered like leaves in a storm, were grappling with the fallout of our recent losses. I could hear the muted whispers, the hushed conversations tinged with fear and desperation. It was as if the fluorescent lights overhead flickered in sync with our anxiety, casting long shadows over the desks that felt like prison bars, trapping us in our despair. "Julia, have you seen this?" Lisa burst into my office, her eyes wide with urgency. She held a stack of documents, the corners crumpled as though they had been gripped too tightly in her hands. I took a deep breath, my heart racing at the thought of what we might uncover. "I think there's something here that could help us. It's about the VP stealings, unethical practices that could change everything for us." A flash of hope ignited within me, a flicker against the backdrop of our shared misery. I motioned for her to sit, the weight of the moment filling the air between us. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice a mix of anticipation and dread. As she laid the documents on my desk, I could see the urgency etched in her features. "These are emails and reports that show how Mr. Thompson has manipulated budgets and misled clients. We can't let this slide, we need to act." The gravity of her words settled around us like a shroud. If we were to move forward, we had to tread carefully. The risk of exposure loomed large, threatening to engulf us if we weren't cautious. My mind raced with scenarios, the potential fallout of challenging someone as powerful as Mr. Thompson. But the thought of justice for my team galvanized my resolve. We had to fight back against the injustices we faced. I glanced at Lisa, her determination mirrored my own. "We can't do this alone. We need the others on board. Everyone needs to know what's at stake. If we're going to gather evidence, we have to be united." As we began to formulate a plan, a sense of camaraderie began to blossom amid the chaos. I reached out to a few trusted colleagues, each one bringing their unique strengths to our cause. We shared whispered conversations in the break room, careful to avoid prying ears. Each time we met, our resolve grew stronger, and so did the risks we faced. On one particularly tense afternoon, we convened in a small conference room, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. I could feel my pulse quicken as I addressed the group, who had come together out of desperation and hope. What we're doing is dangerous, but it's necessary. We have the chance to expose what's happening, to reclaim our power. But we have to be smart. The room felt charged, a palpable energy coursing through us as we outlined our next steps. With each shared secret, our bond strengthened, and I could see the flickers of determination in their eyes. We were no longer just individuals caught in a web of betrayal. We were a team, united by a common goal. Yet, even as we plotted our course, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. The fear of retaliation from Mr. Thompson was a constant shadow, whispering doubts that clawed at my mind. What if we were discovered? What if our efforts were in vain? But each time I felt that familiar pang of uncertainty, I reminded myself of the stakes. We were fighting not just for ourselves, but for the integrity of our entire department. As the days turned into nights filled with strategy sessions and late-night phone calls, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. We were on the brink of something monumental. We had a chance to turn the tides, to stand up against the injustice that had plagued us for too long. With every document we gathered, every piece of evidence we compiled, the weight of our collective struggle felt lighter, as if we were finally unearthing the truth hidden beneath layers of deceit. The tension built within me like a coiled spring, ready to snap at any moment. I knew we had to act quickly. The longer we waited, the greater the risk of exposure. As I prepared to confront the VP with our findings, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation. This was it, our moment to reclaim our narrative and seek justice for the wrongs we had suffered. And as I sat there, surrounded by my allies, I understood that together we were stronger, and the power of unity would guide us through the storm ahead. The air in the mediation room felt thick, almost suffocating with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Soft, muted colors surrounded us, beige walls, a polished wooden table that gleamed under the flickering fluorescent lights. It was meant to foster calm, but instead, it radiated an oppressive atmosphere of discontent. I could hear the distant murmur of voices from the hallway, a reminder of the chaos brewing just outside these closed doors. My heart raced as I took a deep breath, my fingers tapping nervously against the smooth surface of the table, each tap echoing my anxiety. Mr. Thompson sat across from me, his expression unreadable but his posture rigid, as if he were bracing himself for a storm. I could sense his unwillingness to compromise, the tightness of his jaw reflecting a stubborn resolve. "Julia, this isn't going to work if you can't come to terms with the necessary cuts. We have to think about the bottom line," he said, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of irritation. I felt a flash of frustration, memories of our previous discussions flashing through my mind, moments where collaboration had once thrived, now overshadowed by this confrontation. How had we come to this? I remembered the early days, the camaraderie we shared when we celebrated our victories together. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the tension that now crackled in the air. "You're asking us to sacrifice our integrity for numbers, Mr. Thompson," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. I could feel heat rising in my cheeks, the mix of anger and desperation fueling my words. "Our relationships with clients are built on trust, and what you're proposing could destroy that foundation." I watched as he shifted slightly in his seat, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face, but he remained silent, choosing to let my words hang in the air. As the minutes dragged on, I could sense the frustration building in the room, a palpable tension that mirrored my own inner turmoil. My colleagues, seated around the table, exchanged glances filled with skepticism, their expressions reflecting the same disappointment I felt. It was clear they were torn between loyalty to me and fear of the repercussions from the VP. I could almost hear their unspoken thoughts, weighing the cost of standing up against the status quo. Then, in a moment of vulnerability, I turned to my colleagues. "I know this is hard for all of us. I want to find a solution that honors our commitment to our clients without compromising our values. We need to work together, not against each other," I urged, my voice softer, almost pleading. A silence fell over the room, heavy and thick, and I could feel the weight of their gazes upon me. I had laid my cards on the table, but would they respond? The tension was palpable, my heart pounding in my chest as I awaited their reaction. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "Julia, we want to support you, but we need to know that our jobs are safe. This isn't just about numbers, it's about our livelihoods. We can't keep compromising our integrity without seeing results." Her words were like a balm, a reminder of the unity we once shared, but they also cut deep. "I understand, and I'm doing everything I can to navigate this situation. Let's brainstorm solutions together, ways we can present an alternative that still addresses the financial concerns without sacrificing our principles, I suggested, the desperation in my voice evident. As we began to discuss potential strategies, I could feel a flicker of hope igniting within me. Yet just as quickly, it dimmed as I realized the uphill battle we faced against Mr. Thompson's rigid stance. Despite our collective desire for peace, it felt as if we were pushing against an immovable wall. The meeting concluded without any real resolution, leaving me feeling disheartened. I walked away with a heavy heart, knowing that our attempts at peace had fallen flat. The sense of disappointment lingered, a reminder that the road to reconciliation was fraught with obstacles, and I was still left grappling with the reality of our situation, unsure if we could ever find a way to bridge the growing divide between us and the VP. Aquella noite no escritorio era silenciosa, come apenas o som do ar condicionado murmurando ao fundo, criando uma atmosfera quase sombria. As luzes fluorescentes ainda cessas, lançavam brilho frio sobre a mesa bagunçada, on documentos e relatórios se acumulavam como lembranças do caos que havia tomado conta da empresa. E eu estava sozinha, cercada por arquivos que pareciam sussurrar segredos que eu estava prestes a desvendar. Enquanto digitava algumas notas, movimento na esquina de minha visão me fez parar. Era envelope manila jogado ao lado da impressora, algo dentro de mim se agitou, e eu não lembrava de ter colocado nada ali. Como misto de curiosidade e apreensão, levantei-me e fui até ele, o coração acelerando como a possibilidade do que poderia encontrar. Ao abrir o envelope, punhado de documentos antigos caiu sobre a mesa. Meu olhar percorreu as páginas amareladas, cada linha revelando acordos obscuros e decisos que não deveriam ter sido tomadas. Fui passada para flashback de reuniões passadas, onde a confiança cada palavra parecia inabalável. Agora, tudo isso parecia uma fachada. Meu estômago se revirou ao perceber que esses documentos poderiam ser a chave para expor a corrupção que havia se infiltrado na liderança da empresa. Isso não pode ser verdade, murmurei para mim mesma, minha voz mal acima sussurrou. A adrenalina percorria meu corpo enquanto a magnitude de descoberta começava a se instalar. Essa era a prova que eu precisava para confrontar o VP, Mr. Thompson, e trazer a luz a verdade que ele tentava esconder. Mas uma onda de medo também me atingiu. A retaliação dele poderia ser devastadora, e eu respirei fundo, sentindo a pressão aumentar. Era agora ou nunca. A determinação começou a tomar conta de mim, sabendo que não poderia deixar essa oportunidade escapar. A ideia de expor a verdade me encheu novo senso de propósito, mas a sombra de incerteza permaneceu. Se eu fosse pega, tudo estaria em jogo. Contudo, eu já havia perdido tanto. Não podia deixar que o medo governasse minhas ações. Essa era minha chance de buscar justiça, não apenas para mim, mas para todos que haviam sofrido com as decisões de Thompson. Como a pulseira de meu relógio pressionando meu pulso, sabia que era hora de agir. The conference room buzzed with a nervous energy as my colleagues gathered, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint whir of the overhead projector. I stood at the front, my heart racing, fingers tracing the edges of a crisp whiteboard where I had scrawled our objectives. The bright fluorescent lights overhead felt harsh, illuminating the anxious faces of my teammates, each one reflecting a mix of hope and trepidation. We were united by a single purpose, to reclaim our agency after the storm of betrayal that had rocked our team. As I glanced around the room, I could see the weariness etched into their expressions, a stark contrast to the eager faces I remembered just weeks prior. David, my steadfast ally, sat with his arms crossed, a skeptical look in his eyes. I could sense the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Are we really ready to take this step?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with doubt. I could feel my stomach knotting, the weight of his question pressing against my resolve. "We have to be, David. If we don't act now, we'll be left with nothing but regret." "We need to show them that we won't back down," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. As I spoke, flashes of memories danced through my mind, laughter shared during late-night projects, the camaraderie that had once defined us. Now it felt fragile, like glass hanging by a thread. The room fell silent, the gravity of my words settling in. I could see Lisa, her brow furrowed in thought, weighing the risks of our plan. What if it backfires? "We could lose our jobs, our reputations," she started, her voice trembling slightly. I felt my heart race, the stakes had never been higher, yet I also knew that doing nothing would preserve our current state of despair. "But what if we succeed? We could expose the truth, hold the VP accountable, and reclaim our dignity as a team," I countered, trying to ignite a spark of excitement amidst the anxiety. I could see a flicker of determination in their eyes as they began to nod slowly, the collective sense of unity starting to build. We brainstormed ideas, each suggestion feeding into the growing momentum that filled the room. A whiteboard full of ideas began to take shape, the markers dancing across the surface as we mapped out our strategy. I could feel the tension easing, replaced by an exhilarating sense of purpose. A shared mission was forming, one that could potentially alter the course of our futures. As we concluded the session, I looked around at the faces of my colleagues, their expressions now a mix of anxiety and excitement. I knew we were on the precipice of something monumental, and I felt a surge of hope. We would stand together, ready to face whatever came next. Our plan was not just about revenge. It was about justice for ourselves and for each other. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to fight, not just for myself but for the team that had once felt like family. With renewed determination, we prepared to take the first steps toward executing our plan, united in our resolve to reclaim what had been taken from us. The courtroom buzzed with a palpable tension, the air thick with anticipation as I stood at the plaintiff's table, my heart racing in sync with the ticking clock on the wall. The scent of polished wood mingled with the faint smell of stale coffee, remnants of the long hours spent preparing for this moment. I glanced at my colleagues seated behind me, their faces a mix of anxiety and determination, each one a reminder of what was at stake. This was our chance to confront the VP, to reclaim our dignity, and to seek justice for the betrayal that had shattered our team. As the judge entered, a hush fell over the room, the gravity of the situation settling in like a heavy fog. I could feel the sweat trickling down my back, the crisp fabric of my blazer suddenly too tight around my shoulders. Memories of laughter and camaraderie with my colleagues flashed through my mind, contrasting sharply with the reality of the courtroom. I had fought so hard to gather evidence to present our case against Mr. Thompson, the VP who had wielded his power with reckless abandon. "Julia, you may present your case," the judge said, his voice steady but firm. I took a deep breath, my palms clammy against the papers in front of me. This was it. I had to pour every ounce of my frustration and resolve into this moment. "Your Honor, we are not just here for the financial restitution," I began, my voice trembling slightly but gaining strength as I spoke. "We are here to stand against the culture of fear and manipulation that Mr. Thompson has fostered within our company. His decisions have not only impacted our jobs but have caused real harm to our relationships and morale." The words flowed from me, a surge of emotion propelling my speech. I could see the murmurs ripple through the courtroom, the tension mounting as I laid bare the truth. As I continued, I noticed Mr. Thompson's expression harden, his arrogance barely concealed under layers of disdain. I could feel his attempt to undermine me, his dismissive scoff cutting through my resolve. But I pressed on, recounting the moments of betrayal, the sleepless nights spent in anguish over the futures of my colleagues. This is not just about numbers, it's about people. It's about the lives that have been irrevocably changed because of his decisions. The gasps from the audience were like fuel to my fire, igniting a fierce determination within me. I locked eyes with Lisa, seated in the front row, her expression a mixture of admiration and hope. In that moment, I felt the support of my team solidifying around me, a shield against the looming threat of Mr. Thompson's power. "Your Honor, I stand before you not just as an employee but as a representative of those who have been silenced. We seek accountability. We seek a change in the leadership that has betrayed us." My voice rang out, echoing in the silence of the courtroom, and I felt the weight of my colleagues' hopes resting on my shoulders. This was our moment, our chance to reclaim what had been lost. The judge listened intently, his gaze piercing as he weighed my words. I could feel my heart pounding, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, fueled by a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was the culmination of our fight, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I had fought for justice, and with it, I had found my voice. As I stepped back, I felt a rush of relief, the burden of unspoken words finally lifted. We had confronted the very embodiment of betrayal, and no matter the outcome, I knew we had taken a stand that would resonate far beyond this courtroom. The aftermath of the court's decision reverberated throughout the office like a thunderclap, each echo a reminder of the turmoil we had endured. I stood by the window of my office, the city skyline stretching before me, the sun casting a warm glow that felt almost surreal against the backdrop of our recent struggles. The once vibrant atmosphere of camaraderie had been replaced by a cautious silence, each colleague absorbed in their own thoughts, reflecting the weight of what we had faced together. As I glanced around, I noticed Lisa and David huddled in the break room, their expressions a mix of relief and uncertainty. A part of me longed to join them, to share in the fragile optimism that lingered in the air. But I hesitated, grappling with the reality that our journey had left scars that wouldn't fade easily. The $6.7 million penalty was not just a financial blow. It was a stark reminder of the betrayal that had unfolded, a betrayal that had forced us to confront the very core of our team dynamics. I could feel the remnants of sorrow clinging to me, a heavy cloak that wouldn't lift. Memories of laughter shared over coffee breaks and brainstorming sessions now felt like ghosts, haunting me with their absence. I had sought to regain control, to steer our ship through turbulent waters, but in doing so, I had nearly sunk us all. The guilt gnawed at me, a relentless reminder of the sacrifices we had made. Would we ever truly recover from this? Yet, amidst the sorrow, a flicker of hope began to spark within me. I remembered the discussions we had initiated after the court's ruling, open forums where everyone could voice their concerns and ideas. Those moments had been raw, filled with tension, but they had also fostered a sense of unity. I had seen my colleagues gradually let their guards down, engaging in conversations that felt transformative, even healing. As I prepared for the upcoming team gathering to reflect on our journey, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the task ahead. I wanted to acknowledge the pain we had endured, to validate the hurt while also reminding us of our resilience. The road to recovery would be long, but I believed in the strength of our collective spirit. We had weathered the storm together, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could emerge from this stronger than before. The future remained uncertain, a canvas yet to be painted. But as I stood there, looking out at the city that mirrored my own tumultuous emotions, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We would face the challenges ahead with open hearts and minds, ready to rebuild not just our team, but the trust that had been shattered. The journey toward redemption was far from over, but I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. The office buzzed with a newfound energy, the atmosphere lighter than it had been in months. I stood in front of my colleagues, a sense of pride swelling within me as we gathered to celebrate our hard-fought victory. The walls, once a stark reminder of betrayal, now felt like a canvas of resilience, painted with the colors of hope and unity. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the sweet aroma of pastries, a comforting backdrop to the laughter that filled the room. I watched as familiar faces broke into smiles, their eyes reflecting a shared understanding of what we had overcome together. In that moment, I felt a surge of gratitude for each person who had stood by me, who had believed in our cause even when the odds were stacked against us. I could see Lisa across the room, her laughter ringing out like music, a testament to our renewed bond. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but we had emerged stronger, united in our pursuit of justice. I knew now that our strength lay not just in our individual ambitions, but in our collective resolve to support one another. As I stepped forward to speak, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. Together, we've shown that change is possible when we stand up for what we believe in. Let this be a reminder that our voices matter, and we must never shy away from challenging the status quo. Let's continue to support each other and strive for a workplace where everyone feels valued and heard. My heart raced with conviction as I delivered my message, watching the nods of agreement ripple through the crowd. I paused, taking a moment to absorb the atmosphere, the camaraderie that had blossomed from the ashes of our struggles. We had fought for our dignity, and now we were reaping the rewards of our perseverance. I invite each of you to share your thoughts and ideas so we can keep this momentum going. Together, let's build a future that reflects our values and aspirations, I concluded, feeling the weight of responsibility transform into an exhilarating challenge. As I looked out at my team, I realized that our journey was just beginning. The lessons we had learned would guide us forward, and I was ready to embrace the next chapter with open arms. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell